Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Sasuke accidentally killed Sakura and traveled back in time part 3? Sasuke Uchiha was by no means a patient man. He could be patient, but when it ran out, he exploded like a forest set aflame. And so he counted his time bit by bit. Soon, it would be time to get rid of Orochimaru. The man had been his main focus that he had almost forgotten about Madara. He did a little digging around and discovered that he was currently using a different identity, Tobi as he was called in the Akatsuki. So far, the Red Cloud criminal organization was silent and he didn't like it one bit. It meant more trouble as he didn't know what the man was up to. He had to take care of him as soon as possible. The man's true agenda was still a mystery. Then there was Danzo. He loathed the man for ordering the assassination of his clan and he was sure as hell that he was going to pay for it. Finally leading him to Itachi, his older brother. He had last seen him 3 years ago. In the previous timeline, he had been going over his family's possessions which were stored in a cabin just outside the Uchiha district when he came across his brother's medical report. He was shocked to find out that Itachi had an incurable disease which ate away his respiratory system. No one had been able to cure him and he hadn't sought for any help. That explained why he was barely able to defeat his brother. No, he didn't defeat him. The illness did. Deep down inside him, he knew he was never truly able to beat Itachi at his level, but he had been an arrogant teenager going through puberty, so a lot was bound to happen. He had to find him because he wasn't going to die in this timeline, he was sure of it. And he would get the respect he deserved because he was a true hero of Konoha. The other issue he needed to solve was the night the Kyuubi attacked 16 years ago. It had been rumored that the Sharingan had been at hand, and that's when the village's distrust towards the Uchiha had been begun. It actually started way back, but that was an excuse to topple the once paramount clan. He believed that none of the Uchiha who were Konoha citizens were actually capable to do that. They were, but they didn't. It had been an outsider. And Itachi wasn't alone. That night his clan was massacred. He couldn't have done all that by himself. He had to have help from a far extraordinary shinobi, one who was also an Uchiha who knew the clan just as well as Itachi did. He was going to find out, even if meant spilling blood over it. He was perched on top of a mountain as he waited for the messenger bird to arrive. 2 hours later, the hawk came into view and came to rest beside him. He took the note, read it twice before burning it to a crisp. He jotted down his own short response and the bird took off towards Konoha. The time had come that he would meet his team again after 3 years. Sometimes, Sakura felt that life was unfair. That everything seemed too good for other people. Eventually, everything had turned good for Naruto. He had come back after 3 years and was taller than her by at least a head. Then Gaara had been kidnapped and Kankuro was poisoned. Lady Tsunade sent Team 7 to help in retrieving Gaara and healing Kankuro. And they did just that. Sakura created the antidote and removed the poison in less than an hour. She went up against Sasori, the master puppeteer, and came out as the victor. If it weren't for the fact that he was a criminal, she would have found him attractive. She also pitied him because of his background. He lost his parents at a young age and Lady Chio was too heartbroken to tell him the truth. In the end, it broke the family apart. When they rejoined with Naruto, Gaara was dead and he blamed Lady Chio for all this. Even though he was emotional, he had no right to do so. In the end, the poison mistress gave Gaara her life force. Naruto even lended her his chakra to do the jutsu. And as everyone around her celebrated the revival of the Yondaime Kazekage, she was cradling the woman's dead body to her chest. Didn't anyone feel grief for losing her? Was she the only person who cared about her? At that moment, she hated Naruto with every fiber of her being. Why was he so dense? Someone must have sensed her thoughts because she caught Gaara staring at her with a pained expression. She looked away and focused on calming her raging heart. No amount of apologies would ever make her forget this moment, a moment where a true hero and patriot of the Hidden Sand Village was treated like nothing. As soon as she finished briefing the Hokage on the mission, she went home for a quick shower and a meal. Her parents weren't home, which was just fine. After dressing in her civilian clothes, she headed to the Hokage Tower. She arrived to find Shizune arguing with Lady Tsunade. The older woman refused to put away her sake. "I will do so if you admit that you like Genma," the blonde said as she took a large swig of the bottle. Shizune stared at her in wonder. "How is that even related to sake?" she asked, though her ears were red. "Both my students are good at what they do yet don't have a man. What kind of master am I not to teach you romance?" Tsunade said as she smiled lazily at them. "A master who should really stop drinking because we might copy your bad habits," Sakura said as she moved to take the bottle, but Tsunade pushed her away with her enhanced strength. "You need it more than I do," she replied as she pointed at the youngest of them all. "With the path you're headed, being an Anbu and all, you might need more than a few gulps of soju," the blonde said as she slumped in her seat and promptly fell asleep. The two cleared her desk and put away her soju. "You should head back home. I'll take care of her," Shizune spoke with a smile. Sakura looked at Tsunade, then back at her. "Do you believe what she said, about me being Anbu and all?" she asked quietly. Shizune was silent for a while before she replied. "I'm worried about the outcome of it. You haven't told anyone except me and Lady Tsunade. Even your team doesn't know, so I'm wondering how you'll cope without a shoulder to lean on. It almost destroyed Kakashi, but because of you guys, he was finally able to regain a bit of his sanity back," she told her honestly. "I won't sugarcoat it, it's difficult, but every time I think of Sasuke and how that snake is responsible for everything that happened to him, my blood just boils until I can't control it anymore," the Pinkett forced out as she tried to control her anger, which spiked at the mention of the snake Sanin. "Is that why you're investigating Itachi's case?" Shizune asked. Sakura opted to remain silent. "I'm not going to tell you to stop, but be prepared for anything. Kona has more than just what you see," she said. "Don't worry, I know that, which is why I started investigating the matter. None of it makes sense. His record was spotless, he had the will of fire burning inside of him. So why the sudden change of heart? To test his powers. That's a bunch of crap, and he wouldn't be able to do it all by himself, and so I need answers. If I want to help Sasuke-kun, then I need to know everything that pushed him to leave," Sakura said. She left the Hokage Tower and headed to the hospital, where she would be until her services as an Anbu operative named Midori were required. "Why do I have to be on a team with you? Yeah. You're annoying as a fly," Deidara grumbled as he watched Toby jump from tree to tree. "Leader says we have to be on a team. And Toby likes Deidara-senpai, and so Toby is happy," the masked shinobi replied with a cheery tone. Deidara rolled his eyes and moved farther ahead. Madara stared at the blonde fly away from him. Having to relive Toby was an exhausting experience. He didn't need to do it again, but it was vital for his master plan, the infinite Tsukuyomi. His ideal world. Everyone's ideal world. He hadn't heard from the Uchiha brat ever since the encounter in the Forest of Death. That was the last time the two talked to each other. Sasuke had become a very important asset the moment he time traveled. He had the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The next stage of evolution was the Rinnegan. He needed the eyes of Sasuke Uchiha in case Nagato's failed. An extra pair of eyes wouldn't hurt. He was going to drive him over the edge. It was simple, really. He would need to kill the one person whom he treasured the most. His brother, Itachi Uchiha. Since he knew the truth about the Uchiha massacre, there was no doubt that he would do everything in his power to save Itachi's life. He was biding his time. The weasel had a terminal respiratory disease which had no cure. He had been secretly feeding him pills to quicken his dying process. If Itachi didn't notice it, he was stupid. Or maybe he did and wanted to die as quickly as could. The kid had potential but was sometimes too smart for his own good. Toby Yubaka. Hurry up already. Deidara shouted. He had gotten lost in his train of thought and thus slacked behind. Sorry senpai. He apologized in a squeaky tonel. I'm going to kill that idiot with my own hands, he added quietly in his normal baritone voice. For now, he focused on his current mission. To capture Yugito ni, the Nibi Jinchuriki. Then he would be left with only the 9 tails, 8 tails and 5 tails. He had already captured the rest and he had done so quietly. He chuckled deeply as he increased his pace to match Deidara's. Deidara senpai, please don't leave me. News that Sakura Haruno had defeated Sasori of the Red Sand spread like wildfire. The medic personally made sure to give Chiyo-sama her credits whenever she was asked about said battle. It's all because Chiyo-sama and her puppets helped me, she found herself often saying. Before his final resting moments, Sasori gave her vital information which would help her find and defeat Orochimaru, bringing back Sasuke in the process. Though the information was more important to Konoha than her, she made it her personal goal to end the snake and anything of his. Today they were going to be introduced to their teammate and captain. Nay Sakura-chan, do you think they're giving us a replacement because Sasuke won't come back? Naruto asked, breaking the silence. They were waiting near the training grounds. I'm not really sure but my guesses are they want to keep an eye on you since you're a Jinchuriki, maybe me as an apprentice of the Hokage and we're both former teammates of Sasuke, she replied. And because I became an Anbu operative when no one was expecting it, she added mentally. I have a question though, he said. She sensed the seriousness in his tone and looked at him quizzically. When we were kids, did you ever hate me? He asked, his blue eyes searching her face intently. Why do you ask? She said. It's because you never talked to me yet we made a lot of contact. You're the only person I smiled at apart from the old man, he explained as he scratched the back of his head with a nervous smile and a slight blush on whiskered cheeks. She walked towards him until she was standing in front of him. I never hated you. I just found you intriguing. It's just that everyone told me stay away from you because you were a bad kid, she replied. Did you parents ever tell you that? He asked again. No, she said. Then why didn't you ever approach me? He queried, trying to mask the hurt look on his face. It's because I was a wuss. I was constantly bullied because of my forehead, as such I didn't have any friends. It was because of Ino that I was finally able to get out of the shell I had built around myself, she said as she touched his shoulder. I'm sorry if you thought that I hated you, I never did, she spoke with an apologetic smile. What about as we grew older? The blonde said boldly. You were annoying Naruto. Girls don't really appreciate confessions from the same guy every day, especially if they don't feel the same way, she told him. Oh, was his only reply as he withdrew from her touch. An awkward silence settled between the two. Naruto stared at Sakura out of the corner of his eye as she watched the sky with a blank look. He didn't know why he had even brought up the topic, it always ended being awkward, the silly love triangle in Team 7. His heart thudded in pain as he watched the pinkett before him. His feelings had never changed, in fact they seemed to get stronger, especially with how womanly and strong she was. He had vowed to bring Sasuke back to her, at the cost of his own feelings. Perhaps someday, he would find someone who would take away his pain because when it came to Sakura, her feelings for the Uchiha were so strong that what other people said didn't matter. Look, there's the new members of Team 7. He heard Sakura say as he snapped out of his reverie of thoughts. Obito Uchiha, or as he was more affectionately known as Tobi or Madara, was contemplating his next move. He needed to start gathering DNA for the Edo Tensei, that was if Sasuke had not killed the snake. Knowing the boy, he would destroy the snake the first chance he got. He had Madara Uchiha's DNA, the true Madara Uchiha who had saved him from the cave all those years ago. He needed DNA from some of the former cage and then for some useless ninja he would resurrect for the sake of it. He stared at the ghetto statue. Only 3 beasts left until he could bring his ideal world into fruition. But first, he had a few things to do. Pain hadn't yet destroyed Konoha, he hadn't sent Naruto and his pink-haired teammate into an imitation of the infinite Tsukuyomi. A smile came to his face at the thought of the medic. She was one of those things which drove Sasuke over the edge. She was a failsafe in case Itachi's death didn't work. The boy had 3 months left to live. With that thought, he got up and headed to the Akatsuki base where he would give the final orders for Konoha's invasion. Team 7 was crouched in the bushes as they watched Yamato approach the informant. Sai watched the 2 members from his viewpoint. Sakura had punched him when he had badmouthed traitor. Well, he was a traitor. It left him curious. He was probably the only person on the team who knew she was an Anbu operative called Midori, and a very good one at that. She had rose among the ranks as a medic and assassin. Soon, she would be team captain. She put a new definition to the word medic in his dictionary. News of towns wiped out by incurable viruses, poisoned water sources with high-level poisons, high-profile civilians dying of stage 4 cancer with no record of the disease before, dead bodies with no external wounds but internal organs utterly destroyed and other underhanded tactics which were very effective. She was a force to reckon with. And her alliance was with a traitor to his village. Not to mention, her best friend was a Jinchuriki, her master was the Godime Hokage, her sensei was the famous Kapi Nin, she was friends with the heirs of the prominent clans in Konoha and so on. She possessed brains and determination that many lacked, she had perfect chakra control. Most importantly, her emotions were as clear as day to him. And so his goal was to find out what went on in her mind. Danzo-sama had given him 2 assignments, to watch Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno and to report their activities. The other was also to make Sakura join Root. And he was going to do just that. He also had an offer to make to Orochimaru on this mission and try to find traitor. If he found him, he would have to assassinate him because he was a threat to Konoha's peace. Why don't you tell your team to come out of the shadows? I know they're there, Kabuto's voice sounded in the clearing. Immediately, the 3 ninjas flashed in front of their captain. If it isn't Team 7, long time no see nay, Sakura-chan, Naruto-kun. Kabuto said with a smirk. I see you have a replacement, finally giving up on dear Sasuke-chan huh? He bantered. Don't talk like you know him, Naruto ground out. Well, I'll have you know that he's doing just fine and he's not coming back anytime soon, the silver-haired medic added nonchalantly. Shut up you moron, Sakura called out, her eyes staring dead at Kabuto. Just tell us what we want to know. Where is Orochimaru and most importantly, where is Sasuke-kun? Either you tell us or we do it the hard way, she said as she cracked her knuckles. You think I'm going to tell you? Kabuto asked boredly. Fine. The hard way it is, she said as she raised her fist and slammed it down onto the bridge. The structure buckled under the force of the blow and fell inwards. With the ninjas suspended in the air as they descended downwards, Sakura hurled several shuriken at the medic. Kabuto took out a kunai and made sure to deflect all the projectiles in case they were poisoned. They landed on the remains of the bridge and Naruto rushed to engage with Kabuto. Yamato turned to Sakura sharply. What point of wait for my signal to attack didn't you understand? He barked out with a frown. Sorry but he was never going to cooperate, I just took the best way forward, she defended. Well, Haruno Taiko, sorry but this is my team and orders are coming from me, got that? He stated with a pointed stare at the medic. Yes Taiko, she said as she clenched her fists. Orders are as follows. Sai, Naruto and I will engage with Kabuto. Sakura, you're to remain as backup and assist with your medical abilities. Move out. The two new members of Team 7 flashed over to Naruto as Sakura remained standing where she was. She cursed Yamato mentally until she could think of no swear words. He was underestimating her. If only he knew of her true abilities. She felt his chakra before he had even made his appearance physically. Having to manipulate her chakra perfectly made her highly sensitive to foreign chakra, no matter how small. She whirled her head to the side looking for him. Where are you, snake bastard? She thought impatiently. Her eyes snapped to the spot just a few meters behind where Naruto was standing as he watched Yamato attack Kabuto. There. She took out a marked kunai and threw it at that spot with precision. As soon as the kunai was at the right place, she substituted with it, pushing Naruto out of the way using her enhanced strength just as a two-headed snake erupted from the ground. One of the heads slammed into her, sending her careening backwards and colliding with Sai. The two crashed into the ground but were standing within a few seconds. Are you okay? Sakura asked, her face marred with concern. I'm fine. He didn't finish his sentence as he coughed out blood, dropping to the ground on one knee. That's what I was asking for, she said as she placed green glowing hands over his chest. Two dislocated ribs, a slightly punctured lung, kidneys, spleen, she muttered under her breath. I can't heal all of your injuries now, but I'm gonna make sure that you can battle without any restrictions, is that okay? She asked as she briefly made eye contact with him. He nodded mutely. I'm sorry. When I slammed into you, I had covered myself with a layer of chakra to protect myself when the snake slammed into me. I hadn't considered that I'd crash into you. The chakra layer is similar to the chakra I use when punching the ground, which is why it probably hurt a lot, she explained as her eyes trained on the battle between Orochimaru and Naruto. It doesn't hurt, he said monotonously. I know it does. I had my clone test it on myself, she spoke. She was quiet for a while before adding. You know, it's not a problem to be in pain or expressing it to your teammates that you're hurting. That's what friends and teammates are for, she said as the green light in her hands died out. She helped him stand up. Are you feeling better? The medic asked. Yes, it doesn't hurt as much, Sai replied. Good, I'll patch you after we defeat Orochimaru, she said with a smile. Thank you, he said with a smile. She could tell it was fake, but at least he was trying. A large explosion sounded in the area. The two looked at Naruto, who had gone into Kyuubi mode, with 5 tails growing and skeletons covering his face and chest. His entire body had turned into concentrated dark red chakra, his eyes glowing white. He roared and sped towards the snake Sanin, who wasn't much better to look at but still sporting a wild look. Shit. This wasn't supposed to happen, Sakura cursed out loud. She turned to look at her newest teammate. Sai, we have to, but the boy was already gone. Wasting no time to look for the root ninja, she sped towards where her blonde teammate was. 2 years earlier, say Sakura, do you wanna go out for drinks? We're catching up as the rookie 9, Ino spoke, catching the attention of the pinkett who was nose-deep reading a medical textbook. The two were seated in the library in the Hokage's tower. Tsunade had left them 3 hours ago to their own devices. No, I'll pass, came the reply. You're not even looking at me, the blonde said with a frustrated tone. Sakura raised her head to find her best friend glaring daggers at her. What? She asked innocently. You're acting as if the library is your new best friend, the other girl snarled. I'm just passing time whilst doing something useful, the medic spoke wisely. By useful, you mean staying locked up in this dungeon doing God knows what, Ino sneered indignantly. However, Sakura continued to look at her innocuously. If this is what it means to become a medic, then I'll pass, she said as she stood up and walked towards the exit, leaving the pinkett alone in the study room. The sound of the door as it slammed shut was unheard to Sakura as Ino's words rang in her mind. They hurt a lot, but she understood where she was coming from. It had been a total of 1 year since Team 7 disbanded officially. Naruto had left 6 months ago and she hadn't seen Kakashi since their last encounter at Naruto's departure. Lady Tsunade had taken her as an apprentice, training the 14-year-old in medical arts and taijutsu. Though she was grateful for her intervention, the whispers of the girl who was abandoned by her team amongst the shinobi ranks made her anxious. Friend Repeller Sakura, they called her. Her ridiculous pink hair made her stand out even more. She had spent a large part of the previous year trying to avoid those whispers inside her head, but the rumors only made it worse. She was too weak to do anything. She was the one responsible for breaking up their team. If only she hadn't been an annoying fangirl, if only she had treated Naruto better, if only she had listened to Kakashi-sensei, none of them would have left. If only she had managed to protect Sasuke from getting the curse mark. She slammed the textbook on the desk, the noise echoing loudly in the empty room. Gathering her books and putting them in a satchel, the kunoichi departed from Hokage Tower and headed towards her apartment. But the voice inside her head wouldn't stop. Why was she alive in the first place? It was better that she had gotten the curse mark instead of Sasuke, or the Kyuubi instead of Naruto. She shouldn't have become a ninja in the first place. She didn't deserve to be on Team 7, she was the weak link of the team. She was the one responsible for dragging everyone down. No matter how much she tried, she'd always be weak. By the time she arrived home, hot tears were streaming down her cheeks. Luckily, her parents weren't home and had left Konoha for a week to visit her grandparents. Quickly discarding her satchel in the lounge, the Pinkett took comfort in the solitude provided by the empty kitchen as she cried her heart out, the thoughts turning disastrous every second. She should just die. She was better dead than alive because she only caused trouble for everyone. Her hands itched for the kunai pressing into her right thigh. She could slit her wrists right there and die a slow death. She didn't know how much time had passed as she sat in the kitchen, leaning against the counter and blankly staring up at the ceiling, contemplating if her life was worth living. As if possessed by a familiar spirit, she raised herself from the ground and exited her apartment. Her movements were stiff and robotic as she made her way towards the Uchiha district. Never in all her life had she gone to the place, but today seemed like the perfect opportunity. It was nearly midnight when she arrived, noting that there wasn't any security. Was Konoha stupid enough to leave it unguarded as it was? She asked herself as she entered the marketplace. A random thought popped into her mind as she walked through the streets. What happened to all the Sharingans? Were they buried with them or they were extracted? They most likely extracted given the lack of security at the district. But if they were extracted, who took them? Was Tsunade aware of what happened to their eyes or was she kept in the dark? Maybe she was told. Or maybe she wasn't told. Her thoughts wandered back to who would take their eyes. The only people with enough power to order something of that manner, since Sasuke was too young to become clan head and Itachi was out of the question, would be the Hokage and the council, that was if an enemy Min hadn't already done so. Say Tsunade wasn't kept in the loop given the council's obvious contempt at the blonde Senju, she might not have been told what happened to them. So who took their eyes? It was probably one of the council members. She stopped at the graveyard, halting her thought processes as she took in the sight of the dozens of graves lined up. Her tears came involuntarily as a sob racked her form. Why would Itachi wipe out his clan? Inasmuch as they were evil, didn't he take into consideration the innocent lives he would have slaughtered for the faults of others? She dropped to her knees as she hugged herself, feeling her chest constrict tightly with pain. The genin wondered how Sasuke must have felt, having everything and everyone he ever loved wiped out in a single night. Why are you crying? She stopped and sniffed, looking through the darkness to find the source of the voice. The moon was partially full, providing enough light for her to see the crow which was perched on one of the many random graves. She blinked slowly and she stared at the crow which edged its head to the side, watching her curiously. The girl stood up and cautiously made her way to the crow. The creature was the least bit bothered by her arrival as it remained on its perch. She stopped in front of the grave and looked down at the name engraved on the stone. Uchiha Shisui, she read as she traced the characters with her fingers. She looked back the crow, which was now looking at her expectantly. Can you talk? She asked, but she received silence in return. I thought so. Crows don't talk. I must be going crazy, thinking that a crow would ever bother to talk to me even if it was possible, she said bitterly. In fact, I am crazy because I'm standing in a graveyard in the middle of the night, alone too. I wonder what possessed me to come here, she told herself as she shook her head at her antics. She turned around to leave when she heard the voice again. You didn't answer me. Why are you crying? She turned to the crow again, eyes narrowing suspiciously. The crow looked at her innocently, its black eyes glistening in the darkness. If you wanted to talk, you could have just said so, she said as she pointed an accusing finger at it. The crow flapped its wings, as if saying that it didn't know what she was talking about. She sighed. She was going crazy. She looked back at the name on the grave again. Uchiha Shisui, that name rings a bell, she thought out loud. The kunoichi shivered unconsciously as a light breeze blew, colder than usual. Winter was approaching soon. Her birthday had passed a few weeks ago, she had turned 14. She had been on mission during that time, where she met the stranger who helped her accomplish the mission. Had it not been for him, she might have been 6 feet under the ground. Or maybe lying in that hideout, long forgotten. Or maybe Orochimaru would have taken her and experiment with her body as much as he pleasured, whether dead or alive. I'm crying because I'm weak. I want to become stronger, for Sasuke-kun, for Naruto, for my friends. I want to become stronger for myself, but I just can't. I feel like I'm backtracking with every breath I take, with every day that passes. Why couldn't I have been stronger? I feel like I'm responsible for the disbandment of my team. I know it's petty and immature to think that a single person can break up an entire team when there were other reasons beyond my control, but I can't help but think if only I had been a better person, she told the crow, watching as its beady eyes blinked almost in understanding. You're not responsible for breaking up your team. You're the one who kept it together and will continue to do so. But you have to believe in yourself, the voice spoke again. Sakura was convinced that it was coming from the crow. Why should I believe in someone so worthless? She spat out as she glared at the creature, offended that it would suggest something so ridiculous. Believe in herself. Yeah, right. Do you know why you wanted to become a ninja? It asked. Obviously, I wanted to. She stopped. Why had she joined the ninja academy? It had always been Sasuke-kun during her years at the academy that she simply forgot why she had joined in the first place. I wanted to become a ninja because there's never been one in my family. And even though I was a civilian and a girl at that, I wanted to prove that I can do it too, she replied. And now, came the reply. She took a deep breath, her mind reminiscing her days with her teammates. Now, I want to become strong that I can protect my precious people and not to be a burden anymore. And also I want to bring Sasuke-kun back. I don't know why he did it, but I'm choosing to trust him. He'll come back eventually if he's the Sasuke no. But I don't know if I can trust myself to keep waiting. It's only been just a year, but I'm regretting letting him go just like that. I should have told Naruto to bring him back. What if he loses himself at Orochimaru's hands? I really want to understand why he left, she retorted. When she received no reply, she came to the conclusion that was being delusional and talking to herself. A sudden thought came into her mind an hour after she rambled to the crow. She looked at it suspiciously, with one eye squinted. You know, it's quite the coincidence that I happened to meet a crow at the Uchiha clan's graveyard. And even suspicious that their killer was a formidable ninja who used crows as his summons, she jabbed a finger at the witch was looking at her blankly. The two continued to stare at each other for the next 15 minutes. You know what? I think I'm going crazy, she muttered as she stared at the sky, which was devoid of stars. Another random thought entered her mind. Why would Itachi kill his entire clan? How was he able to do that all by himself? It didn't make sense. The information at the library left a lot of loopholes she had ignored until now. The Uchiha clan was one of the founding clans of the village. Come to think of it, she had overheard the women at the hot springs gossip that they had been relocated to the outskirts of the village after the Kyuubi attack a decade ago. There had been rumors that they were responsible for the attack itself and wanted to take over, yet that couldn't have been true. They were the founding clan after all. But let's say they did try to take over the village and actually were responsible for the clan. What would make them turn against the very thing that they had built unless the village had turned against it? Gears started spinning in her mind as she mentally went through all the books she had read on the founding of the village. The Nadaime Hokage, Tobirama Senju, had sidelined the Uchiha specifically during his reign when he formed the police force, plus he was also the one who had killed Madara Uchiha's younger brother and showed obvious distrust of the Uchiha since before the founding of the village. Her Shisho had told her the many times that she had seen the white-haired shinobi express his disdain of the said clan multiple during her childhood. Sakura groaned as a migraine wrecked her head. She was thinking too much. Trying to get answers when there wasn't any source except what she read at the library and common sense. Sending a crow a fugitive glance, she bid the creature farewell with a promise to meet the following day before she returned to her apartments and slept barely 2 hours before the sun was up. Oi, what are you doing here? Sakura turned to the sound of Shikamaru's voice, a smile gracing her features as the brunette shot her a curious look. The Pinkett was currently in the midst of the Nara forest, a secluded area she had asked Shikaku to use for her experiments. She had gotten to work with Shikamaru more than a few times on the missions he led as a Chunin, forming a mutual but strong bond between them. Sometimes, it would be just the two of them for diplomatic missions. She guessed that Lady Tsunade wanted her to be well versed in politics as she was her apprentice. Good morning, she chirped as she turned back to the plant she was tending. When my mom said that a pretty girl was looking for me, I had a hunch that it might have been you, he drawled out as he stopped to stand beside her. Am I the only physically appealing female your age that your mother knows? She asked, holding back a chuckle. Apart from Ino, yes. Plus I haven't introduced you to her. My old man knows you but he's probably too lazy to tell her, he said with a barely concealed yawn. Sounds like someone familiar, she joked, earning an eye roll from the older boy. So what are you doing? He asked as he peered at the plant curiously. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen. It looked like a combination of a poisonous ivy, a cactus and opium. What in the world is that? Sakura giggled with barely contained glee. I'm trying to create my own plant with both poisonous and healing effects, she told him with a Cheshire cat smile. And how are you doing that? The Nara heir regretted his question as soon it left his mouth. Because she would start a very long lecture about medicine, biology and whatnot. He was saved from an earful of biology garbage as a masked ninja appeared in a tree above them. Sakura Haruno, you're required immediately at the Hokage Tower. He disappeared before she could blink. Well, I guess that ends this session before it even started, she said with a barely concealed groan of annoyance. I'm actually grateful, he commented as he perched himself on the tree branch, closing his eyes. Sakura grumbled at the action. She was about to leave when Shikamaru's next words stopped her. If you ever need someone to talk to, come find me. She turned to look at the Chunin but he was already fast asleep. Had she been dreaming? Was Shikamaru, the laziest person she knew, actually offering her a shoulder to lean on? Had he seen her emotional turmoil for the past year? Had Ino told him? She shook those thoughts away, allowing herself to revel in the small pleasure his words had given her. Thanks. With that, she sped off to the Hokage Tower. You want me to go on a mission with Anbu? Sakura asked incredulously. I didn't know that my apprentice's hearing skills were poor, Tsunade deadpanned. Sakura snapped out of her moment of disbelief. I'm sorry, I thought I must have been hallucinating. You find it hard to believe that I'm sending you on a mission with Anbu. Give me a break, Sakura. You're the best medic that Konoha has seen in many years. Give yourself a little credit, the blonde spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. But this isn't any ordinary mission. This is Anbu, for crying out loud. I'm not even a combat medic yet, I haven't mastered the Byakugo no In, the Pinkett fretted. Which is why I'm sending you on this mission. Think of it as a test to gauge your combat skills. You'll be going there as a medic, but I won't promise that you won't be attacked, as this is a mission which needs the best medic we have. They might not all make it out alive, which is why I'm sending you, Tsunade explained, though it did nothing to assure her. I know it's risky sending you on a mission, but this is the best that I could do. The council has been pressuring me to make you join Anbu as a combat medic, of which you're still green, she spoke. Why would they want me to join Anbu? Sakura asked, confused. Tsunade looked at her incredulously. Sakura, have you seen your mission record? You have an impeccable mission record. All your missions have been bordering between B rank and A rank for the past 8 months. Not to mention, you've been flying solo this entire time, the Hokage stated. That's only because all my teammates are out of the village and I haven't seen Kakashi-sensei ever since Naruto left. If they were here, they'd be getting most of the action, the Pinkett argued. Are you saying that you're not strong as a shinobi then? The Senju asked. I'm not what you give me credit for. I'm just an ordinary 14-year-old chunin, nothing special about that, she said as she looked at the ground. Well then, allow me to read your mission summaries. Several drawers were opened and a pink folder was slammed on the wooden desk. Sakura thought that it was ironic that her mission folder would be pink when its contents were dark. A rank mission. Duration: 5 days. Mission type: assassination. Method: poisoning food, though the target's autopsy says that it was a natural death. A rank mission. Duration: 3 days. Mission type: infiltration and information gathering. Method: modified appearance using a low-level genjutsu and induce the target's brain to reveal classified information by manipulating the brain cells and nerves into believing that they were speaking with their boss. Supported by another genjutsu. B rank mission. Duration: 7 days. Mission type: poison curing. Method: found a cure within 3 days and had treated every affected person by the end of the week. A rank mission. Duration: 12 days. Mission type: protection. Method: successfully accompanied a family of the civilians, who are the daimyo's in-laws. Used water-based clones to impersonate the family, then changed the family to appear as another Konoha Junin squad using a low-level genjutsu and took a different route. A rank mission. Duration: 4 days. Mission type: assassination. Method: forced the heart to beat 4 times faster than normal speed by touching the target for a moment, resulting in a heart attack and instant death. A rank mission. Duration: 10 days. Mission type: assassination. Method: slit target's throat by throwing a chakra scalpel. B rank mission. Duration: 8 days. Mission type: assassination. Method: ruptured the target's brain with a chakra pulse, resulting in instant death. B rank mission. Duration: 14 days. Mission type: large-scale assassination. Method: poisoned an entire family using a leaf from a plant that was created by. Okay, I hear you. You don't have to read them out loud. I feel bad already that I had to kill so many people using my medical prowess instead of healing, Sakura grumbled as she glared at her master. I can read your mission summaries where you were required as a medic, that's not the point, she said tiredly. What's going on with you, Sakura? You're not like this. You've been down this whole year, I thought perhaps it was because you weren't going on missions, so I decided to give you more and more complicated missions, but it seems to be not working. What am I doing wrong? Tsunade asked as concern laced her tone. Her usually hardened features were soft. Sakura found it difficult to speak. She had never opened up to anyone about what was troubling her. Not even to Ino. But she had to let it out. Logically, Lady Tsunade would be the best option considering that she was the Hokage and could decide on how to handle her shinobi career given her mental health. It's just that, for a long time, I have been obsessing over Sasuke-kun. For the past year, everything that I did was to bring him back. Yet I told Naruto that we would wait for him to come back. At first, I was confident, but after reading Orochimaru's history and some of his personal notes that I found at the hospital on his medical researches, I'm losing faith every single day. I shouldn't have told Naruto to let Sasuke go to that snake. He should have brought him back. Who knows what lies he's been feeding him. Sakura growled at the last part. I feel frustrated every day. I have this pent-up anger that I just can't seem to control. I don't want to explode at my friends, so I've been avoiding them. Obsessing over Sasuke-kun took up a majority of my time ever since he left. And I'm angry at him for leaving. I'm angry at Naruto for letting Sasuke-kun go and leaving me too. I'm angry at Kakashi-sensei that he never taught me anything save for that single statement about camaraderie. I'm angry at myself for being weak, for being useless. I can't take it anymore. I should be doing something, yet all I've ever done is cling onto a child's dream. I want to stop obsessing over him. I want to stop being angry, but I don't know how. She wasn't surprised to find tears rolling down her cheeks. The frustration was overwhelming her, making her angrier by the second. Sakura, you'll hurt yourself. Sakura immediately looked down at her hands. She had been unconsciously channeling chakra to her right hand, which was gripping her left wrist. She could feel the familiar ache of a dislocated wrist now that her mind was clear and she focused on healing herself. I knew that there was something wrong with the way you've been completing your missions. They all seemed too crude for you. You were too soft for that, Tsunade admitted tiredly. Well, now you know that I'm not soft, Sakura snapped. Tsunade let that slide as she faced her apprentice. Which is why I want you to take this mission. The only way to get rid of your frustrations is to act on them. That anger, you have to take it out. You're not strong, but you're smart. You fight with your brains more than with jutsu, which is why I never bothered to teach you more jutsu apart from ninjutsu. Somehow, you have a way of making it out alive even though you're disadvantaged. Take the mission, Sakura. It'll do you good, the Hokage ordered her. Yes, Lady Tsunade, Sakura agreed. Sakura dyed her hair a dark green color using temporary dye. She was given a white mask which had a green diamond on the forehead and two smaller ones on either sides of her cheeks. Her uniform was a bit loose since she hadn't finished her growth spurt. But it would do. She was given a katana which she could use fairly well ever since Yugao trained her for a month when she was on leave. Her team captain introduced himself as Neko. He pointed to her three teammates, Karasu, Inu and Nezu. They were the same age as Kakashi-sensei and were all male. She introduced herself as Midori. She would be providing backup as a medic. They headed out at midnight. Their mission was simple. They had to assassinate an entire family of drug dealers who located just near the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Water. They should have told her they would be killing children, but they didn't. They should have told that they would be killing for the elderly too, but they remained quiet. Initially, she was furious that Lady Tsunade hadn't considered her mental well-being as a medic if she had to butcher children. But after a while into the fight, she understood why Lady Tsunade and her team captain didn't find it necessary to warn her. Because they were all the same. They weren't ordinary drug dealers. They were chakra dealers. They had a Kekkei Genkai which could copy another person's chakra and even recreate it. Every single one of them, which was why they had to eliminated. She was grateful that Orochimaru didn't stumble upon them because who knew what he would do if he discovered he could recreate an Uchiha's chakra. Sakura ducked under a jet of steaming hot water. Little droplets of the water splashed onto her skin and left red angry marks. A quick scan of her surroundings told her that her teammates weren't faring well. Which was why she had to intervene before they were all butchered. Because the Nakamura clan could copy a person's chakra, they changed their elemental affinities every now and then, and it seemed they had an unlimited supply of chakra. They were 20 in total and they had managed to kill only 5 of them, who were all children barely past the age of 10. Out of the corner, she watched Neko create multiple Earth-based shadow clones which managed to take the brunt of the lightning bolt one of the Nakamura seniors had thrown at him. She saw him close the distance within the blink of an eye and slashed the man across his neck, spraying blood all over his uniform. One more down, 14 to go. There were currently 6 children, 4 adults and 4 elderly. Her teammates were fighting against the adults, with the children occasionally assisting Rem. She decided to start with the elderly before going on to the children. She took out her katana and flashed to an old lady who looked to be well over 50 years. She was currently hiding behind a bookshelf in the large dining room. She wondered why they would put a bookshelf where people took their meals. Perhaps they liked to read. Or it was just for decoration. Or it was to be used as a hiding spot. The gray-haired woman snarled at her as she sent kunai at her. She was too slow to dodge and all the kunai hit bullseye. The woman was down before Sakura moved on to the next pair of old men who had taken to running outside. She quickly followed and used a substitution jutsu to appear in front of them. They both stumbled at her abrupt arrival. Sakura twisted her katana in her hand as she walked towards them. Please have mercy, they pleaded as they tried to scamper away from her. She ignored their cries as she slashed their necks, resulting in quick deaths. She substituted back into the double-story building, where she saw Karasu cut down a girl who appeared to be in her early teens. She could smell the poison from the kunai which was lodged into his shoulder and she shunshined over to him. Take this. It'll stop the effects of the poison for 2 hours, she said as she pressed 2 pills into his hand. The blonde-haired Anbu wasted no time in popping them into his mouth and she could imagine his face scrunching up in distaste. Those pills were her recently developed anti-poison special grades and they tasted horribly. An earth spike sailed over them and the two of them immediately split up. She went to attack the man who had sent the jutsu. She dodged under a fist and retaliated with a kick to his sternum. It felt like she hit a brick wall and hurt so bad that it caused her to see white light. She clutched her broken ankle as she jumped away from him, sending healing chakra to her injury. The man smiled at her as he wiped blood off his cheek. Not so tough, are we now? He asked in a deep baritone voice. She finished healing her ankle and focused a large pulse of chakra in her right fist as she charged towards him. The man remained unmoving and her fist connected with his face. It felt even worse than her broken ankle and she bit back a curse as she jumped back to nurse her wounded arm. She eyed him warily as she healed herself. His body couldn't be that tough. It was impossible, unless he was copying someone else's technique. She racked her brain through the 1,000 or so elemental jutsu that Lady Tsunade had forced her to study for the past 6 months. None seemed to match this one. The man closed the distance between them and punched her in the stomach. Sakura felt her eyes bulge outwards as she was sent careening backwards, crashing into the walls and out in the open. Her momentum was stopped when she slammed into a tree. She coughed violently as her lungs complained due to the lack of air. It felt way worse than Lady Tsunade's punches. She tasted blood in her mouth. It was unlike any punch she had ever received. Ah, the wonders of chakra manipulation. Quite handy, don't you think? The man smirked as he walked over to her. She could still hear the sounds of battle going on inside, the clash of metal and elemental ninjutsu. You know, Chakra is very unique to an individual, just like DNA. Change a little something and you get something entirely new. He exclaimed, his brown hair dancing with the slight breeze. Imagine if you could change your chakra, what possibilities lie ahead? His laughter was almost maniacal, and Sakura would have found it funny if it weren't for the burning sensation she was feeling where he had punched her. She touched her mask, it was still intact. Sakura could count how many broken bones she had in her body. If it weren't for the fact that her body was used to healing itself, she would have died long ago. Not to mention, her chakra levels had depleted tremendously. Having to supply her own natural chakra pool, then the Byakugo was clearly taking its toll on her. She wiped blood which dripping down her hand onto her armor. Her arm muscles were trembling with exhaustion and from hitting the enemy nin whose body seemed immune to her attacks. Her breath came in slow puffs and she was pretty sure she was going to die on this mission. Too bad the council had great expectations about her. They wanted her to join Anbu, yet she couldn't even complete the first mission she had been assigned. She tried to sense for her comrades, but they were too far away Her chakra sensing abilities weren't that great and she pitied herself for not trying to improve. Feeling their feeble signatures would have been enough to spur her into action before she died. Getting tired, aren't you? The man, Taki Nakamura, asked her as he stood a good distance across her. He was favoring his right leg, the only attack which seemed to have an effect on him. She still couldn't place how it had affected him. She had been repeating the same thing for over an hour now without changing tactics. There had to be a weak link in his jutsu, there just had to be, otherwise she was done for. She allowed herself to think. He was obviously using an earth-based fire, lightning and air were out of question for obvious reasons. Maybe he added a bit of water release, but still, it didn't get her any closer to defeating. She allowed herself again to think. She needed whatever armor he had to crack. She only needed one punch to end him. She didn't have any dujutsu to see any chakra layering him, and medical ninjutsu didn't seem to work on him. Well, it was up to basic laws of nature at the end of the day. She was placing her last bet on this. She took out a bunch of explosive tags and clutched them tightly. She needed to place them strategically in order for her plan to work. She created a soundless clone and sent her out to put the tags in place whilst she continued to stare at the man. All out of ideas, huh? It's to be expected since you're going up against something way above your paycheck, Taki sneered. And what is that? She asked, putting up a brave front but feeling anything but brave inside. Well, since you're about to die, it wouldn't hurt to let you know. It's a simple earth-based tekinshu that allows the user to turn their body as hard as diamond. How does that happen? Simple. A diamond is a piece of coal that has been subject to so much pressure that it eventually becomes indestructible. You, my friend, have been aiding me in this process as the force of your attacks compresses the earth, which is my body, to become even harder. So thank you, little one, for making me more powerful. He laughed maniacally and he lunged towards her like a bullet. Sakura darted to the left whilst avoiding a boulder which had materialized out of thin air. She ducked under a spear but failed to see the punch which sent her flying into a tree. She slumped down onto the ground like a ragdoll. She coughed blood which dribbled down her chin and into the black fabric of her top. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted an explosive tag her clone had left. The ninja approached slowly, making his way towards his prey he had cornered. Just a little bit closer, she spoke to herself. Say, are you familiar with the process of exfoliation? She asked him. What's that got to do with anything? He asked as he stopped in front of her. You know, the process whereby a rock peels its surface because it was subject to extreme temperature changes. She explained. No, I'm not familiar. I'm not Scholar Kid. That's Ricky's job and he's dead, the man spat out. Good for you. 'Cause you're about to find out. At that exact moment, She activated the explosive tag closest to her as she substituted herself with a leaf she had coated with her chakra a while ago. The first explosion didn't reach her, but the second and third propelled her up into the sky. She took several gas bombs she had personally created since she wasn't a fire type and threw them below. Coating herself with a thin layer of ice she had mastered a week ago, she dropped down and landed on a treetop half a kilometer away from the ongoing explosions. The explosive tags had been huddled in one place and didn't cover a lot of ground, but the gas bombs made up for it. As she saw the last explosion go off, she used the body flicker jutsu to cover the distance between her and the enemy. She wasn't much of a sensor, but she was good enough. Quickly sensing for the chakra signature, which wasn't as strong as it had been before the explosion, Sakura made her way towards it. The ground was burning hot, but the ice jutsu held firm, even on the soles of her feet, as they would melted as soon as they touched the ground. Tsukisuru no jutsu, she muttered quietly as her modified version of the water-based jutsu took hold on the enemy nin. The water ropes were much thicker and colder than the usual jutsu. As soon as they made contact with his skin, the screams that came from the man were deafening. But amidst all that screaming, she could hear the cracking of earth, the ripping of skin, as the natural law of PHSYICS, chemistry and biology took its course. The smoke was slowly vanishing and Sakura was ticked at the rate at which it was going. She wanted to see how it was actually like. With a small gale from a wind technique that Lady Tsunade had taught her, the smoke vanished immediately. But the smoke emitting from the man did not. He screamed and thrashed as he fought against the holds of her jutsu as his skin cracked open in several places, blood oozing like ice cream dripping down her hands. Sakura was amazed for a good 5 seconds at her handiwork. The bitch deserved it, especially since he worked with Orochimaru. Still high on adrenaline and fear that the tide of the battle might turn against her, she took out a kunai and flung it straight into his skull. He stilled immediately, his head rolling to the side. She wanted to drop down and sigh in relief that it was over, but she knew better. It wasn't over until she had passed the gates of Konoha and was in her bed without the shadow of death looming over her. She took a scroll from her pouch, hands covered in dirt and soot. She sealed the man inside the scroll and made her way back to the original battlefield. Only Karasu was able to stand as she reached the Nakamura residence, or what remained of it anyways. It had been razed to the ground and was barely recognizable from the grand mansion it had been a few hours ago. Inu, Neko and Nezu were out cold. "Are they alive?" she asked as she reached them. "I was hoping you'd be able to tell me that. It is why you're here after all." Medical backup, the masked man spoke with an air of indifference. "And I spent the better part of the last 2 hours bargaining my life with death while you were playing hero. Mind you, he was just as strong as everyone else, if not more. But here I am, well and alive, with the whole of this team relying on me if they want to get back to Konoha alive." She spat out, the exhaustion taking its toll on her and making her spout nonsense. "What are you getting at, soldier? Are you threatening insubordination and leaving our comrades to die?" Karasu asked menacingly as he invaded her personal space. He towered over her by at least 2 heads, he was unusually taller than most people. "Oh, you misunderstand me, Karasu-san. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply demanding respect from something that neither of you seem able to do, not at this moment or any other time. So I suggest you treat me with the appropriate respect as becoming of my title as the medical commander on this team. My word overrides any of you, even your captain, as long as you're on my turf," she stated. She moved closer to him, only a hair's breadth between. She titled her head up and glared at him through the holes of her mask. The man scoffed but moved away from her. Sakura hummed delightfully. She was not going to have someone tread on her life's work just because they had testosterone. She hadn't spent the last year fighting tooth and nail to keep up with the greatest medical ninja of all time for nothing. "Let's move them to somewhere with cover so that I can work on them properly." They trudged through the gates of Konoha in the wee hours of the morning. Karasu seemed adept with transportation jutsu and it had taken them less than an hour to return to the village. She wondered why he had not used his jutsu to transport them to the border in the first place but thought better of it. He had to preserve as much of this chakra in order to fight. Her legs had burned as they raced to the edge of fire country. She wasn't accustomed to such speeds and she hadn't had a mission in a long time. But she was not going to spit in her mentor's face by showing weakness. It had taken them 3 hours to get to the Nakamura residence, 2.5 hours of fighting and healing and 20 minutes for their journey back. Most of Konoha was still asleep at this time, even as the sun was slowly making its ascent into the sky. They first reported to Anbu headquarters where Neko gave the mission report to the Anbu commander. She remained quiet and sat in the team room as Inu and Nezu wandered around, testing to see if Midori had done a good job healing them. Karasu was staring at her the entire time. Or maybe he wasn't. But he remained unmoving from his spot across her. When Neko returned, he dismissed them, telling Nezu and Inu to get personally checked by Shizune at the hospital who was awaiting them. With that, he left. The other 2 members of their cell followed suit and soon it was just Midori and Karasu. They stared at each and Sakura felt awkward for a full minute before she decided it was time to leave. Now that she was no longer on the battlefield and the rush of adrenaline having faded away an hour ago, Sakura felt the full force of her actions. It weighed even more than the exhaustion she was feeling. She had talked back to a superior and in a not-so-friendly way. She was very polite with authority figures but a near-death experience had made her bold. She had to fix this. She went down on one knee with her head bowed. Anyo, Karasu-san, about what I said when you asked me to heal our comrades, I apologize for coming as too straightforward and blunt. I meant no disrespect or insubordination, I was merely stating, you're truly your master's student, aren't you? If it weren't for her mask, she would be the perfect representation of a dying fish. She spluttered as she struggled to come up with a coherent sentence. He couldn't possibly have known that she was Suon's apprentice. Shisho had made sure that no one knew her identity. The man was already gone by the time she was sensible. Back to the present, Sakura sped towards Naruto at breakneck speed. This wasn't supposed to happen. They didn't prep me for this. I'm just an ordinary civilian with a small arsenal of jutsu. She mentally screamed to herself. Long gone was Naruto and in his place, the half-transformed Kyuubi. He roared, the sound causing her ears to ring harshly. Naruto! She yelled at him to no avail. Her eyes involuntarily welled up with tears. She ignored Captain Yamato's calls to stop. Naruto! Snap out of it! She shouted again, her voice breaking at the last word. She felt like she was 12 again, useless in the forest of death. Damn it, Naruto! She yelled again. She seemed to have caught his attention as the beast turned to look at her. She was only a few yards away from him. Good. Now what do I do? She asked herself. Naruto, please, this isn't who you are. Don't let the Kyuubi take control, she spoke gingerly as she took cautious steps towards him. He stilled for a second before one of his tails lashed out at her. Sakura had half a second to move out of the way. Though she avoided the brunt of it, the tail left enough damage to make her consider quitting ninja life. Stupid. That's what you get for being useless, she cursed herself as she bit down a cry of pain. It seemed that Naruto was now intent on attacking her as he made to move towards here only to be stopped with wood wrapping itself around his midsection. Yamato's wood encased his hands and feet before finally wrapping around his neck and head. Sakura could only watch in fascination and horror as the wood style user restrained Naruto like he was an animal. The pain in her arm brought her back to reality and she was reminded just how weak and useless she was. Even after all this time, she still hadn't changed. She couldn't protect that which fueled her desire to be a better ninja. She watched as Yamato went through several hand seals before Naruto's tail started retracting, reverting back to his human self. However, he was covered in so many burns that left her reeling. Immediately, she ran towards him and caught him just before he hit the ground. She cradled him in her arms as she began healing him. But even her meager attempts at help were unneeded as the Kyuubi had already begun healing. Several emotions clogged up her throat, causing her eyes to burn with the effort to not cry. You know, I thought you had no heart. Sakura looked up to Yamato watching her closely. Pardon, she asked him, her tears drying immediately as she glared at him defensively. I know who you are, as Midori that is. It's hard not to know of the younger ones who make you second guess what it means to be a medic, he told her seriously. I don't know how that affects your opinion of me. Neither should I care, she scoffed with an eye roll. She had stopped healing Naruto but he was yet to wake up. From the little time that we've been a team, I found it difficult to understand you. On one hand, you seem like this person with no feelings, just existing. On the other, your smile genuinely lights up the room and feels real, he remarked. Gee, excuse you for being a pervert, she commented with an eye roll. I don't mean it like that. He was quick to defend with a flustered expression. This caused her to crack a small smile. But after seeing you run to him like that, I can tell that you're really low. Naruto let out a loud groan as he slowly regained consciousness. Sakura was grateful for the distraction as she did not want to talk about her feelings with someone she barely knew. She helped him to sit upright. You okay? She asked him with genuine concern. Yeah, I'm fine. Apart from feeling like the entire Hokage monument dropped on top of me, he huffed. This caused Sakura to chuckle a bit. What happened? He asked as he looked around the wreckage. You and Orochimaru fought but he got away, she said with a pointed look at Yamato. He better not say anything stupid. He seemed to catch on though he looked dubious. Yes, Sai also left with them. It seems that he was on another mission and I have a good enough guess that it was by that man, the older ninja spoke with an undertone of anger. Naruto looked at her in question but she shook her head. She would tell him about Danzo later. I put a tracking device on Sai. We can follow him to Orochimaru's hideout. My guesses are that we'll meet Sasuke too. Though I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna do once we see him. Let's head out. Sakura could feel Naruto's gaze on her the entire trip to the hideout. Ever since her fainting episode, he wasn't even discreet with his gawking. It's not like she was going to drop down any second. She had been stupid to leave an injury like that unattended, especially as a medic of her caliber. Another wave of pain shot up her arm and she felt herself slip out of consciousness momentarily before forcing herself awake. Now was not the time to be showing just how weak she was. They arrived at the hideout and surprisingly it wasn't underground. An intricate genjutsu gave the place an illusion of a bunch of rocks lying around. Sakura was more than happy to remove it without triggering anyone. They entered the hideout and decided to split in order to cover more area. Yamato had put trackers on them and could immediately pinpoint their location and alert each other if one of them ever ran into trouble. Sakura made her way through the dimly lit hallways. They did nothing to ease her fear of tight spaces. The air reeked of wetness, moss and something close to blood. That's funny. I don't remember smelling blood anywhere else, she thought to herself. With a little time to kill, she decided to track the source of that smell. Surely if she snooped around, she wouldn't be affecting the mission. If they found Sasuke, they'd notify her and she'd go immediately. Just for now, she wanted to know Orochimaru's dirty secrets. The smell led her to a room deep in the hideout. The room was tucked away into a little corner, hidden by another genjutsu and sealed with a very complex seal. Being in Anbu for the past year gave her a bit of an advantage in situations like these. After 5 minutes, she had removed the genjutsu and seal. The room was barely furnished except for an operating table and a water tank. Surprisingly, the room smelled clean and had no smell of blood. Was I imagining things? She asked herself. She went over to the operating table. There were some tools which appeared to have been used but were in good condition. She walked over to the water tank. Nothing seemed amiss yet for Orochimaru to take that many precautions to seal this room. She wondered what was in it. Common sense screamed at her to leave the room and never turn back, but inner Sakura told her to shove a fistful of chakra into the tank and unleash whatever was inside. Curiosity and duty battled in her mind, leaving her undecided. Time was running out and she couldn't spend the rest of the day gawking at a water tank. Just this once, I'll indulge myself even if it costs me my life, she thought to herself as she put a hand to the glass. There was another seal on the tank. She removed it. Here's goes nothing, she said and slammed her fist into the tank. The glass exploded under her fist and the water rushed down, covering the entire floor. She waited for a minute, she waited for 2 more. Nothing happened. Well, congratulations for getting yourself worked up over nothing. Stupid, she scoffed at herself as she kicked at a small puddle. A loud explosion knocked her off balance. She heard Yamato's tracker vibrating on her wrist. Immediately, she ran out of the room, her thoughts occupied with Sasuke and not noticing that the water had begun to take shape. Sasuke had spent the past days memorizing what he would say to his teammates. He knew that Kakashi wouldn't be with them and his replacement Sai would be on this mission. He swore he should have killed Danzo first upon arriving back in the past, but he needed the man alive for a time. He had done well as the perfect student, but he had done all he needed. It was time to finish him. But first, he wanted to see his teammates. No, he craved for them. It was a little different this time since he wasn't being driven by revenge. And it scared him. He wondered, perhaps he had gotten soft. That could be the only explanation of what he was feeling as he stared down at his at his team sans Sai and Yamato. For the first time in almost 3 years, he saw Naruto. Though he wasn't as tall as him, he had definitely grown taller. Long gone was the annoying little midget whose clothes looked a bit big on him. There was not an ounce of baby fat on his face and he resembled the best friend he had left in the past. Naruto looked like he had just seen a ghost. Surely he wasn't that bad looking, right? Cutting across to Sai and Yamato, Sasuke frowned disapprovingly. Even when he had gotten back to the village in the past time, he hadn't been keen on working with the replacements of Team 7. Call him a sentimental little shit, he didn't care, the original could never be replaced. His eyes finally landed on her. The girl who had somehow landed him back in the past. The girl who had died by his own hand, visions of her death plaguing his nightly escapades as if he were under the Tsukuyomi. He suppressed a shiver. Just seeing her alive again made him want to cry, in anger and happiness. He could never forgive himself for what he did, even if it was in the past. Now that he was in a different timeline, it didn't change the fact that in another timeline, she had died by his own hand, something he had never imagined himself doing. Not even once. She looked young, vibrant and youthful. Her eyes had glazed with unshed tears and a flash of guilt passed through him. He stamped down on it. Now was not the time to be reconsidering all his life decisions. He had come so far and was so close. They could wait a few more years if it came to that. Sakura. He spoke, eyes trained on her. He ignored Kabuto's meaningful smirk and vowed revenge upon him as soon as they returned to their hideout. Sasuke, you, her voice caught in her throat before her expression turned steely. We've come to take you back to Konoha, Yamato spoke. Sasuke almost rolled his eyes back to the past. He wasn't talking to him. I thought by leaving the village I made it clear that I have no intention of coming back. Perhaps I misjudged Konoha's comprehension skills, he drawled out with a flat stare. I don't care what lie that hideous snake fed you, but you're coming back to Konoha, You hear me, bastard? Naruto yelled at him. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at him. Is that a challenge? He asked him. We gave you enough time to see just how much it isn't worth to be under that snake. Now it's time for you to come back. The blonde shouted. You don't even know why I'm here. I've accomplished more with Orochimaru than I ever could with Konoha, he remarked. Liar. And you know it. Have you forgotten all that time we spent as Team 7? Have you forgotten what we went through together? The Jinchuriki rambled. If it had been past Sasuke, he would have been more than happy to answer him. Current Sasuke, however, was running short on time, hence he had to cut their time short as he had another mission to complete. But he could go along with it just a bit. Without replying, he flash-stepped to Naruto and landed just in front of him. His hand was on his shoulder and was leaning close to him, resembling a hug. Do you want to know if I've forgotten? He asked. He could feel his teammate trembling under his touch, not from fear but definitely from anger and desperation. Sasuke removed Kusanagi from her sheath, taking his time to make clear his intentions. He held his katana for a moment before moving down to Naruto's neck, the tip of the blade at the lead. Before he could reach the blonde's jugular, planning to make just a nick deep enough to draw blood, Sasuke felt a wave of air rushing towards him. He was quick to jump away before Sakura's fist slammed into him. Sakura, your orders, Yamato yelled, but he was ignored. His pink-haired teammate glared at him furiously. Come and face me, she challenged him as she rushed towards him with only her fists. Sasuke knew just how dangerous those hands of hers were, and he was more than welcome to test it for himself, but alas, time was not on his side. He simply dodged her attacks, making no move to engage with her, thus making the kunoichi more frustrated. Naruto seemed to snap out of his daze and rushed towards Sasuke. Seeing that the situation was slowly becoming what he wanted to avoid, Sasuke cast a quick lightning jutsu that spread over their perimeter. As Team 7 took cover, Sasuke flash-stepped back to Orochimaru. By the time that the lightning died down, Sasuke was long gone. The team sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The cackling of the fire filled the soundless atmosphere, even the critters of the night seemed to be slumbering that night. I hope that's the last time you'll ditch a mission, Sai. The Hokage isn't exactly forgiving with these kinds of things, Yamato spoke for the first time. Sai looked at him without expression. The captain sighed and motioned for him to follow him as he stood up and walked away. The remaining duo followed them with their eyes, not taking their eyes away from them until they were out of sight. They remained silent for a bit before Naruto stood up and went to sit beside her. Sakura remained motionless as she stared at the fire, legs crossed as her hands were folded on her lap. Anyo Sakura-chan, the blonde started. Sakura turned to look at him with that same blank expression. It left him feeling hollow and invalid. I'm really sorry for everything. Yamato told what happened when I transformed. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you. His voice broke at the end. Those few words were enough for everything she was holding back to spill out at once. She started crying immediately, body-wrecking sobs as she bawled her eyes out. I should have been stronger. I should have worked harder. Everything I've done so far is not enough, she cried softly. That's not true, Sakura-chan. You've given more than I could ask for, Dadbao. Naruto tried to comfort her. I was so scared. I thought I was going to lose you, Naruto. I thought I was going to lose you to that damn fox. I couldn't do anything but watch. Without Yamato, she couldn't finish her words as she started sobbing again. Naruto couldn't help his own tears. Gingerly, he wrapped an arm around her. He was surprised when she leaned into his embrace. I'm sorry I couldn't stop Sasuke from leaving. I know I told you to let him go the first time cause I thought maybe if he saw for himself just how terrible Orochimaru is, he'd come back. But I was wrong. And it's all my fault. If I hadn't stopped you back then maybe he'd be with us right now, she spoke hoarsely. Don't, please. I'm equally to blame. You're not wrong, and you're not weak or useless, the blonde spike as he hugged her tighter. If I am, then why did you leave me? She asked quietly. Everyone had their own teammates, I had no one. Sasuke abandoned the village, you left, and Kakashi straight up disappeared. I can count the number of times I saw him the past 2 years, and it's not even 5 times, she pointed out. If I'm not that bad, then why did you leave me? Why did everyone just go away without considering how I would feel? I'm not as uncaring as you think. I also value my bonds and precious people, she told him. She was looking at him with a broken expression, the fire dancing pitifully in her red-rimmed eyes. She was a far cry from the girl that he knew, the girl he saw when he came back. She always seemed so strong, unaffected and focused. But underneath that cool exterior, she was hurting inside, and he hated himself for it. He was so focused on getting Sasuke back that he never considered his other teammate. Not once had he written her a letter, as he knew she couldn't write to him because of security reasons. Sakura, listen to me, he said as he looked at her intently. You're not weak, you're not useless, neither are you alone. I should have been a better teammate to you. I know I promised to train to bring Sasuke back, but I didn't consider that I had left you behind, he spoke. Well, it's not like I spent the days mopping and feeling sorry for myself. I trained too, I just felt invisible. And I guess that's what made me so cold, 'cause I couldn't take all the negative emotions. I could only bottle up everything inside, she confessed. Naruto smiled, his face lighting up. Thanks for telling me, Sakura-chan. Now I know, 'cause for a while I thought you didn't like me anymore. But I promise, I'll do better, Dadbao, he said cheekily. Sakura mirrored his actions. And thank you too. Your return really helped me, I feel so much better after talking to you, she retorted shyly. Naruto blushed at her flustered expression. It's no problem, Dadbao, he grinned widely. Sakura wiped away her tears, then turned to hug him fully, settling her head in the crook of his neck. Naruto thanked the heavens that he was alone, and also it was at night. He was pretty sure that at this moment, his face was redder than Hinata's could ever be. His heart was thumping fast, and he hoped that she didn't catch on to it. He didn't want to make things weird between them, considering that she had never shown interest in him like that, and it wasn't every day that she poured out her heart to him and hugged him willingly. But for a tiny fraction, he allowed himself to be delusional and wrapped his arms around her. If your heart keeps on beating that fast, you're going to faint. Don't read too much into it, Baka, she snapped, though he could hear the smile in her voice. His response was to laugh and hug her tighter in return. Sasuke Uchiha was a permanent headache to Tsunade ever since he left Konoha. Sakura's constant sulking and obsession with the Uchiha massacre was enough for her to deal with. The girl seemed to have a split personality disorder, literally. She could see it in the way she went about her days. On one hand, she seemed to be determined to bring back Sasuke. On the other, she gave him her full trust, believing that he would come back. When the slug Sannin had taken her for an apprentice, she thought she had taken a simple-minded civilian to teach her the ways of a medical shinobi. Sakura had proven herself to be more than just ordinary in more than many ways. Tsunade wasn't sure about how to feel about it, to be proud or frightened. Sakura was unpredictable, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode at any second. Sasuke Uchiha was a permanent headache to Tsunade ever since he left Konoha. Sakura's constant sulking and obsession with the Uchiha massacre was enough for her to deal with. The girl seemed to have a split personality disorder, literally. She could see it in the way she went about her days. On one hand, she seemed to be determined to bring back Sasuke. On the other, she gave him her full trust, believing that he would come back. When the slug Sannin had taken her for an apprentice, she thought she had taken a simple-minded civilian to teach her the ways of a medical shinobi. Sakura had proven herself to be more than just ordinary in more than many ways. Tsunade wasn't sure about how to feel about it, to be proud or frightened. Sakura was unpredictable, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode at any second. She had even given her permission to join Anbu without the qualifications required, if only to help sat that desire that boiled underneath her skin every second, to quench that killing intent that seemed to hum in the air every time Orochimaru was mentioned. Thinking of her apprentice was another migraine entirely on its own. It all came down to that damned Uchiha. She could understand why they had been a constant thorn since before the Warring States era. Somehow, the Uchihas always ended up being the main characters without even trying. They seemed to demand the attention of everyone around them. Sasuke Uchiha was no exception and was going to be the death of her one day. She was brought out of her musings as Kakashi made his way into her office. She took a long swig of her sake. This was going to be a particularly long meeting and she needed to be as radical as possible. Small doses of alcohol kept her awake and alert under intense pressure. "Good morning, Godime-sama," the silver-haired ninja greeted. "No need for the formalities, you brat," she said with an informal wave of her hand. "As you're quite aware, the Akatsuki have been a constant pain in the ass since their formation. My informant has given me valuable information, a potential attack on the Hidden Leaf Village. He's not sure when, but he believes that the leader of the Akatsuki possesses the Rinnegan. He goes by the name Pain. He has 6 other members, or rather 6 other Pains with different abilities. Detailed information about their skills are in this report," the blonde said as she tossed a scroll at him. "What am I to do with this?" he asked her. "I plan on leaving you the hat, I've made that quite clear to you. If I so manage to die before we get rid of the Akatsuki, I'd rather do so knowing that someone is gonna get rid of them eventually," she confessed. Chances of her making it out of the attack in one piece were next to none. Things could change, as they had already done so. "I've already informed the Junin command to prepare for a potential attack. Jiraiya is currently investigating the Akatsuki as we know, but given the nature of their abilities, I fear they may be too great for him," she said as she took out another scroll under her desk. "I'm sending you on a mission to assist Jiraiya in his investigation. You'll be going with Genma and Yugao. Shizune will be there for backup and medical," Tsunade told him as she tossed the scroll. "Shizune? Wouldn't it be wiser for her to be here in case of the attack?" the younger shinobi asked. "I have Sakura. They should be arriving in a few days. Besides, the attack depends on the results of your mission. You leave today at dusk. I've already informed the others, though I haven't given them much detail. You shall see to it how much you'll disclose to them," she replied. Kakashi looked at her, then at the 2 scrolls in his hands. They felt heavy, but her next words were even heavier. "By all means, make it out of that mission alive. I need all my best ninjas in one piece. This isn't an order, it's a plea." Madara watched in boredom as the 3-tailed beast was being sucked out of its Jinchuriki. His mind was elsewhere, thinking of a certain dark-haired brat who had been a constant thorn in his side for the past 2 years. Time and again, he had thought of going back to the future. The jutsu clearly stated he could go back to his exact timeline he had jumped back from. It could only be used once and no more than that. However, the thought of leaving that arrogant prick behind would always make him fume in anger. He already knew too much, leaving him behind was no option. As wise as he was, he knew that there was no way he could fight Sasuke and weaken him enough to traverse through time. The jutsu clearly stated that you could only travel by yourself. How the boy had managed to tag along was beyond him. Thinking about it was useless, he had to be content with remaining in the past. It would certainly make things a lot faster since he had knowledge of the future. He had been making moves. Sasuke Uchiha had decided not to remain put. Of all the Jinchuriki, Madara had managed to get a hold of the first 4 beasts. Obviously, the Uzumaki brat and the 8-tailed Jinchuriki were out of question, as he hadn't managed to get them even in his previous timeline. The only two remaining were the 6 and 7 tails. Before, they had been given freedom to do whatever they wanted. However, in this timeline, they rarely made an appearance. Only Sasuke knew that the Akatsuki had kidnapped them. It seems the boy was working with someone else. He would do something about it sooner. He had spies in the right places and only needed to utilize them properly. His eyes slid over to Itachi. Always the perfectionist with his Mangekyo Sharingan turned on at all times. Honestly, it was tiring to have his thoughts dominated by two arrogant brothers. He pondered on what to do about the older brother. No doubt, Sasuke was going to do something to save his holier-than-thou brother. If he didn't kill him now, Itachi was going to die either from overusing the Sharingan or that despicable lung disease. Even if he tried to kill him now, there was 100% chance that he would not succeed. As arrogant as he was, there was no way he was going to risk his plans just because of petty beef with a teenager. This was a trait he shared with his relatives. His mind shifted away to happier places. Soon, he would be reunited with her. It was the only thing that brought a smile on his twisted face. They had been at the hideout for almost a week. Orochimaru's condition was getting worse since his fight with Naruto. If it were him, he would have never engaged in a fight with such a horrendous beast knowing it would weaken him. But Sasuke couldn't complain. It just made things a lot easier for him. It was high time he started working on other aspects of his plan. His time with Orochimaru was up. With that thought in mind, he took his Kusanagi and went to pay the man his final visit. Naruto was happy that he was finally back in Konoha. It felt good to be home after such a long time. Since the time he had reconnected with Sakura again, there wasn't a single time he wasn't smiling. The thought of her even now made him smile like the idiot he was. He couldn't help himself. This was Sakura. The first and only girl he had ever liked. Though her personality seemed a bit more jaded than his, she was still Sakura. His Sakura. The girl whose smile automatically lighted up a room. The girl who cried for Lady Chio even though she had known her for only a few days. The one who pushed herself beyond her limits at the hospital so that no one died on her watch. Alas, it was being in love all over again. Why are you smiling less? Is my story really that funny? I personally think that Orochimaru is an ugly-looking fellow, Sai asked from beside him. He had almost forgotten about his pale companion. After talking with Sakura, they had talked with Sai too. It turned out there was more to him than just a blank facade. He had been trained to be an emotionless machine. The original members of Team 7 took it upon themselves to teach him the basics of humanity. Are you thinking about ugly again? Sai asked with that eerie smile of his. I told you not to call her that. And no, I'm not thinking about her, he snapped, the lie feeling wrong coming from him. You've been like that ever since you two talked to each other. I can see you really enjoy being in her presence. You're even doing that stupid smile of yours too. Naruto wiped the smile off his face and coughed defensively. Sai was looking at him smugly. My book says whenever a guy smiles in the presence or absence of a girl, even at the mere mention of her, then that means he likes her. Which means you must like ugly, the boy said with that fake smile of his. Naruto gave him an annoyed expression. It doesn't matter whether I like her or not. She already likes someone else. I don't even stand a chance, he replied, trying to sound unaffected but failing miserably. Is that so? It doesn't seem to stop you from liking her anyways. I'm yet to understand what makes you infatuated with her so much. She barely fits the standards of an attractive female, Sai said with that clueless expression of his. Sakura can't be tied down to standards. She's so much more than that, the blonde replied. That sounds very cheesy and gross coming from you, the dark-haired boy admitted. Naruto rolled his eyes at him. Ahead of them, Tsunade and Sakura were walking to the Hokage Tower. A smile immediately blossomed on his face. Granny Tsunade. he shouted as he dragged his teammate to the two females. Naruto. Funny. We were just looking for you, Sakura said with a smile as the two boys approached them. Really? Why? He asked her. Well, Lady Tsunade wants to talk to you about something. Plus we have a mission too, the pink-haired medic replied. Finish whatever you're doing and come meet me in an hour. Don't be late, the older woman warned with a glare. Don't worry my lady, I can just pick him up after finishing up at the hospital. We'll come together, won't we Naruto? The girl smiled beautifully at him. Naruto felt his heart lurch in his throat and flustered to make a sensible reply. I'm sure Les would appreciate that. Sai surprisingly came to the rescue. The two ladies waved goodbye to them. Naruto stared longingly at his retreating teammate. Even her figure was perfect, her hips swaying perfectly and in sync with her master. He let out a love-sick sigh. I guess you do like her that much, Sai said as he looked curiously at Sakura who was now a mere dot in the distance. Intel says that Pain is located in Omegakure. We've managed to infiltrate the village but where to find him is another issue, Jiraiya spoke. Don't they have a cage tower? Yugao asked. I'm not sure. I doubt they do though. This village is still recent and pretty much weak even though their leader is strong. Efforts seem to be focused more on building the village rather than its military defense, the white-haired ninja replied. They had arrived a few days ago in AIM. Little had happened. Their intel hadn't given them exact locations on where to find Pain or any of his clones. They had tried to investigate some more but they came out with no results. There were no bathhouses here. The group was seated on the rooftop of a building and it was raining. Could it be that they're not here? Shizune asked. If not here then where are they? Genma asked. A frustrated silence hung in the air between them. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere and the group looked at each, immediately tensing as they prepared for an attack. I was hoping you'd leave once you saw that who you're looking for is not here. It was female voice. It was grave and void of warmth. The woman was dressed in an Akatsuki robe with blue hair and a paper flower decorated into her hair. She had yellow eyeshadow which matched with her face, blue lipstick and piercings on her lower lip. She was standing on a rooftop across them. Who are you? Kakashi asked, a kunai clasped firmly in his hand. They had all donned their Anbu uniform, complete with their masks and katanas. Even Shizune had the uniform even though she wasn't Anbu. The only one who wasn't dressed up was Jiraiya. I am Conan of the Akatsuki. I shall not waste my time in learning your identities, you're about to die anyways, she said as she held out her hand and a paper plane formed in the center. What makes you so wise that you can defeat all of us? Jiraiya asked, his eyes narrowed at his former student. The woman spared him no glance. Kakuzu and Hadain made an appearance beside her with the white-haired ninja donning a very excited look. Let it be known unto you that these are your last moments of freedom and living. Where you so desire to return, there will be nothing left for you to return to, so it would be better if you died and spared yourself the pain, the female Akatsuki stated flatly. What do you mean? Jiraiya asked, dreading her answer. The man you're looking for, Pain, our salvation and leader, is already on his way to Konoha to show the hidden villages who is the true savior of this world. Pain. The world shall know Pain. Tsunade looked out the window of the Hokage Tower. It had been almost a week since Kakashi and his team had left. There hadn't been a word since. The least they could do is tell me if they found the asshole or not, she grumbled to herself. Her hands itched for a glass of sake. It would really come handy now, but she needed her body to be at its best behavior if they were going to survive this attack. She had sent Naruto to his toad summons to train Sage Mode. Jiraiya had made it clear that the boy had to master Sage Mode as soon as possible. She hoped that he came back in time. She heard commotion outside and stood up. They better not be rowdy genin who have got nothing to do, she muttered in annoyance as she went to the window. The few pedestrians who were outside were looking at the sky. Immediately, Several Anbu dropped into her office. My lady, there seems to be an unknown figure in the sky, Hawk spoke. His description. Anything useful I can use to identify him? She asked as she walked towards the door. The Anbu opened up a path for her as she passed. He seems to be wearing a black robe with red clouds, the ninja replied. There are also reports of 5 other individuals wearing the same attire in the village, he added. The blonde Hokage leisurely made her way up to the rooftop of the tower. The Anbu followed silently behind her. She arrived on the rooftop and indeed there was a man floating in the air. Indeed, he had a black robe with red clouds. She noticed that there were several piercings on his face. That must have hurt, she thought out loud, earning confused glances from her subordinates. What caught her attention wasn't his hair color but rather his eyes. The Rinnegan, bingo. Guess the brat was right all along, she thought. Hey. The shinobi who had been in the middle of delivering a speech of sorts stopped to look at her. The female medic couldn't help the shiver that went down her spine. His entire aura was off and eerie. The sage could have been a little more creative with his eyes, she deadpanned mentally. Didn't your mother teach you that it's rude to enter a foreign land and not pay respect to its leaders? Her voice boomed loudly in the clearing. He continued looking at her blankly. Who are you and what is your purpose? She asked him, her gaze hard. I am Pain, he replied in a flat tone. A clone indeed, she noted. I know that you're not alone. There's 6 of you and then the leader who's controlling all of you. That seemed to get a reaction out of him. I already know all your plans. I dispatched a team to finish off your friend in a megacar. Conan, was it? She spoke as the man narrowed his eyes at her. I care not what happens to her. She will die, that is the sole purpose of humanity. To be born into this wretched world only to die one way or another, either at the hands of your loved ones or your enemies, he retorted, a sick smile on his face that sent goosebumps all over her skin. She raised her hand and her Anbu disappeared. What about a friendly spar between you and me? The civilians were evacuated as soon as Pain and his lackeys were spotted. Preparations had already been in place such that it took only minutes for everyone to start heading to the tunnels under the Hokage monuments which would lead them to several underground bunks. They were a good distance away from Konoha in case the village got bombed or something along those lines. All shinobi were to remain behind to protect the still moving civilians as well as to fight off any enemies. The 5 Pain clones prowled the streets. Various beasts emerged out of nowhere. They were immediately dealt with by the Konoha nin. Each ninja had been assigned their duty by the Junin command. For the first time, Sakura wasn't in medical. It seems the higher-ups were aware that she was needed more in combat rather than at the medical tents. However, she was returned to her usual post with immediate effect as soon as the attack was over. She had been assigned to one of the Pains along with several Anbu. She would be under a mask during this fight. She also had another special assignment that was vital to the protection of the village. Almighty push. The earth and caved under the force of Tsunade's crash. She coughed up a lot of blood. Her entire body hurt more than the word itself. She was sure she had several broken bones and a lot of internal bleeding. She had taken more than her fair shares of almighty push. Faye. Stupid name, she thought begrudgingly as she got up. The woman charged straight into the air to meet her foe head-on. She threw fists which were all dodged. He threw a punch which she ducked under. The blonde grabbed a hold of his outstretched arm, twisted it before lunging him to the ground. He slammed face first into the ground. As he stood up, he spit out dirt. He formed a metal rod out of the palm of his hand and sent it flying at the Hokage. Tsunade leaned sideways to avoid it only to get her shoulder caught with another one. Damn it, she thought to herself. Activating her Byakugo no In, she removed the rod and sent it back to the owner. She was already upon him with her leg raised high, ready to slam him into the ground yet again. He moved sideways. Her heel connected with the ground and it yielded under immediately. The force of her attack caused the dirt to pick up, carrying Pain along with it as he was simultaneously knocked back. The man was quick to draw several more rods and sent them hurtling towards the woman. Tsunade dodged them all and met him head-on, exchanging a flurry of kicks and punches at breakneck speed. She wasn't the slug Sanin for nothing. She had survived the Third World War and came out a victor. Her name was known throughout all the lands. She would not be defeated by one of Jiraiya's brats. She still had a buttload of paperwork to do. She took satisfaction as one of her punches connected with his face, sending him crashing into an apartment complex. So much for avoiding damage. That's definitely gonna cost a lot. She mourned the property damage internally as she watched the man come out of the rubble unscathed. Her seal was helping her stay upright. She wasn't at her peak as she was 20 years ago. Just a little bit more and I can finally have some much needed rest, she thought. Enough of this. I have a mission which is to put an end to everyone's misery here, he stated as he began floating up into the sky. Oh no you don't, she shouted as she immediately formed a summoning seal. Katsuyu puffed into existence in all her mighty glory. It was roughly a quarter of her size yet she towered over the Hokage mountain. Face me like a man, you motherer. She yelled, her anger getting the best of her. Lady Katsuyu, please bear with me. This man is one of the strongest shinobi alive. We only need to bait him for a while longer as we finish our defenses, she explained to the giant slug she was standing atop. I understand my lady, the summon replied with a nod. A stream of acid shot out of its mouth, aiming straight at Pain. He dodged it. Several shots of acid in quick succession spewed out the slug's mouth. Pain flew in the air as he avoided the attacks. A stray shot connected with his shoulder, burning the fabric off his shoulder and chest. It ate away at his skin, revealing the bone that was underneath. The man gritted his teeth, his pain, huffing as his body convulsed profusely. He glared at her murderously. The earpiece in her ear beeped loudly. Lady Tsunade. She didn't hear the rest of the words as a massive ball of chakra connected with her. Katsuyu had already engulfed her but it did little to reduce the damage. She felt herself being dismembered and torn apart as she descended to the ground. She hoped her seal was enough to keep alive. The last thing she saw was a literal meteor of pure chakra hovering in the air before darkness completely engulfed her. Naruto arrived to find the village in chaos. The toads had reverse summoned him back to Konoha saying he was needed at the village immediately. He had just gotten the hang of Sage Mode. He had wanted to object, saying he needed to practice more but he was glad that they had forced him to return. He could never forgive himself for failing to protect the village in the name of training. Civilians were still being evacuated as the battle raged on. Naruto noticed that their shinobi fought to avoid as much damage as possible. There were few civilians scattered about as they hurriedly made their way to the evacuation tunnels. There were also some dead bodies littering the ground. He ran through the streets, trying to find any familiar face who could tell him what the heck was going on. A double-headed lion literally jumped out from a portal that appeared in front. He shoved a Rasengan in its face before continuing his search. Naruto Uzumaki. A green-haired Anbu was perched on the side of the building in front of him. You are to come with immediately. You have strict orders to. The woman's words died on her tongue as they both took in the sight of the giant ball of chakra which increasing size by the second. What the heck is that? He asked in shock. The ball stopped expanding. A moment of tense silence passed. It was broken as the ball started descending to the village. Naruto could hear the screams emanating from every side yet he could only stare. His Rasengan wouldn't be able to stop this, no matter how big it was. He felt utterly helpless. He was going to die. They were all going to die. This was the end. The massive chakra orb was quickly approaching them. It reached the Hokage monument and went no further. Several strange colored patterns dotted the skyline. An intricate web of chakra protected Konoha from the assault. It trembled from the force but held firm. Everyone cheered as the web started moving, enveloping the chakra orb in a prism. He could feel his spirits returning. Several seconds lasted before it was covered completely. The chakra orb suddenly exploded in a white light, making a deafening roaring sound that hurt their ears and made everyone cover them instinctively. The bright light forced them to cover their eyes. When Naruto reopened them, the sky was clear as if there hadn't been a threat looming over them mere seconds ago. The Anbu let out a sigh of relief. The blonde has almost forgotten about her. Naruto Uzumaki, you have orders to neutralize the threat known as pain immediately. That was just his clone. His real body is located just outside the village. Follow me, she spoke in a robotic tone. Naruto didn't need to be told twice and followed the woman. Madara was seated peacefully as he enjoyed a cup of tea. He was in a megakure, specifically where the Gedo statue was located. He needed to finish off the Konoha nin who had made an unceremonious appearance at his village, especially Jiraiya. By this time, he had been already killed off in the last timeline. Yet he was still alive. He had arrived late at AIM. Had he been earlier, he would have encountered pain, but time was not on his side. He could not risk the entire mission because of him, no matter how important it was that he die. His mind went to more pressing things. It was vital that he get the Rinnegan as soon as possible. His plan had been to kill Konan and go to Konoha to collect his eyes. Nagato had been adamant that he go alone. He didn't want to risk his most prized friend. Too bad he didn't know that he had left her in the lion's den. It was honestly a pity. The Uzumaki had lost his other friend because of the injustices of the shinobi world. But it would all be fixed soon. He just needed to collect all the tailed beasts and all would be well. He took out a kunai. He put his teacup on the floor and made his way to the dozen of cables that were connected to the Gedo statue. Nagato had done a perfect job to feed it with his chakra. He was no longer useful. Except for his eyes. Yes, he still needed his eyes. He slashed at the cables. Konan knew something was wrong the moment it stopped raining. It always rained, that's why their village was called a megakure. All the Konoha shinobi were here. She was currently engaged with them, begrudgingly fighting alongside Kakuzu, Hidan and Deidara. A rainbow started forming. She turned to look at the cage tower. She had sent a clone with Nagato in the form of a paper flower. No one had found Nagato yet at his location near Konoha. No one else knew of the location of the Gedo statue except for her, Nagato and Tobi. The only person who knew the full extent and importance of the statue to Nagato's current state was none other than that damned Uchiha. She took off in the direction of the tower. I always felt like the pain arc deserved more action apart from Naruto Ora farming. Anyways, thank you for the support. Tozunana. African Fire. First previous ch27 of 29 next. Review. Jump. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8, Chapter 9, Chapter 10, Chapter 11, Chapter 12, Chapter 13, Chapter 14, Chapter 15, Chapter 16, Chapter 17, Chapter 18, Chapter 19, Chapter 20, Chapter 21, Chapter 22, Chapter 23, Chapter 24, Chapter 25, Chapter 26, Chapter 27, Chapter 28, Chapter 29. Share. Email. Facebook. Twitter. Tsunade looked out the window of the Hokage Tower. It had been almost a week since Kakashi and his team had left. There hadn't been a word since. The least they could do is tell me if they found the asshole or not, she grumbled to herself. Her hands itched for a glass of sake. It would really come handy now, but she needed her body to be at its best behavior if they were going to survive this attack. She had sent Naruto to his toad summons to train Sage Mode. Jiraiya had made it clear that the boy had to master Sage Mode as soon as possible. She hoped that he came back in time. She heard commotion outside and stood up. They better not be rowdy genin who have got nothing to do, she muttered in annoyance as she went to the window. The few pedestrians who were outside were looking at the sky. Immediately, several Anbu dropped into her office. My lady, there seems to be an unknown figure in the sky, Hawk spoke. His description. Anything useful I can use to identify him? She asked as she walked towards the door. The Anbu opened up a path for her as she passed. He seems to be wearing a black robe with red clouds, the ninja replied. There are also reports of 5 other individuals wearing the same attire in the village, he added. The blonde Hokage leisurely made her way up to the rooftop of the tower. The Anbu followed silently behind her. She arrived on the rooftop and indeed there was a man floating in the air. Indeed, he had a black robe with red clouds. She noticed that there's several piercings on his face. That must have hurt, she thought out loud, earning confused glances from her subordinates. What caught her attention wasn't his hair color but rather his eyes. The Rinnegan, bingo. Guess the brat was right all along, she thought. Hey. The shinobi who had been in the middle of delivering a speech of sorts stopped to look at her. The female medic couldn't help the shiver that went down her spine. His entire aura was off and eerie. The sage could have been a little more creative with his eyes, she deadpanned mentally. Didn't your mother teach you that it's rude to enter a foreign land and not pay respect to its leaders? Her voice boomed loudly in the clearing. He continued looking at her blankly. Who are you and what is your purpose? She asked him, her gaze hard. I am Pain, he replied in a flat tone. A clone indeed, she noted. I know that you're not alone. There's 6 of you and then the leader who's controlling all of you. That seemed to get a reaction out of him. I already know all your plans. I dispatched a team to finish off your friend in a megacar. Conan, was it? She spoke as the man narrowed his eyes at her. I care not what happens to her. She will die, that is the sole purpose of humanity. To be born into this wretched world only to die one way or another, either at the hands of your loved ones or your enemies, he retorted, a sick smile on his face that sent goosebumps all over her skin. She raised her hand and her Anbu disappeared. What about a friendly spar between you and me? The civilians were evacuated as soon as Pain and his lackeys were spotted. Preparations had already been in place such that it took only minutes for everyone to start heading to the tunnels under the Hokage monuments which would lead them to several underground bunks. They were a good distance away from Konoha in case the village got bombed or something along those lines. All shinobi were to remain behind to protect the still moving civilians as well as to fight off any enemies. The 5 Pain clones prowled the streets. Various beasts emerged out of nowhere. They were immediately dealt with by the Konoha nin. Each ninja had been assigned their duty by the Junin command. For the first time, Sakura wasn't in medical. It seems the higher-ups were aware that she was needed more in combat rather than at the medical tents. However, she was returned to her usual post with immediate effect as soon as the attack was over. She had been assigned to one of the Pains along with several Anbu. She would be under a mask during this fight. She also had another special assignment that was vital to the protection of the village. Almighty push. The earth end caved under the force of Tsunade's crash. She coughed up a lot of blood. Her entire body hurt more than the word itself. She was sure she had several broken bones and a lot of internal bleeding. She had taken more than her fair shares of almighty push. Faye. Stupid name, she thought begrudgingly as she got up. The woman charged straight into the air to meet her foe head-on. She threw fists which were all dodged. He threw a punch which she ducked under. The blonde grabbed a hold of his outstretched arm, twisted it before lunging him to the ground. He slammed face first into the ground. As he stood up, he spit out dirt. He formed a metal rod out of the palm of his hand and sent it flying at the Hokage. Tsunade leaned sideways to avoid it only to get her shoulder caught with another one. Damn it, she thought to herself. Activating her Byakugo no In, she removed the rod and sent it back to the owner. She was already upon him with her leg raised high, ready to slam him into the ground yet again. He moved sideways. Her heel connected with the ground and it yielded under immediately. The force of her attack caused the dirt to pick up, carrying Pain along with it as he was simultaneously knocked back. The man was quick to draw several more rods and sent them hurtling towards the woman. Tsunade dodged them all and met him head-on, exchanging a flurry of kicks and punches at breakneck speed. She wasn't the slug Sanin for nothing. She had survived the Third World War and came out a victor. Her name was known throughout all the lands. She would not be defeated by one of Jiraiya's brats. She still had a buttload of paperwork to do. She took satisfaction as one of her punches connected with his face, sending him crashing into an apartment complex. So much for avoiding damage. That's definitely gonna cost a lot. She mourned the property damage internally as she watched the man come out of the rubble unscathed. Her seal was helping her stay upright. She wasn't at her peak as she was 20 years ago. Just a little bit more and I can finally have some much needed rest, she thought. Enough of this. I have a mission which is to put an end to everyone's misery here, he stated as he began floating up into the sky. Oh no you don't, she shouted as she immediately formed a summoning seal. Katsuyu puffed into existence in all her mighty glory. It was roughly a quarter of her size yet she towered over the Hokage mountain. Face me like a man, you motherer. She yelled, her anger getting the best of her. Lady Katsuyu, please bear with me. This man is one of the strongest shinobi alive. We only need to bait him for a while longer as we finish our defenses, she explained to the giant slug she was standing atop. I understand my lady, the summon replied with a nod. A stream of acid shot out of its mouth, aiming straight at Pain. He dodged it. Several shots of acid in quick succession spewed out the slug's mouth. Pain flew in the air as he avoided the attacks. A stray shot connected with his shoulder, burning the fabric off his shoulder and chest. It ate away at his skin, revealing the bone that was underneath. The man gritted his teeth, his pain, huffing as his body convulsed profusely. He glared at her murderously. The earpiece in her ear beeped loudly. Lady Tsunade. She didn't hear the rest of the words as a massive ball of chakra connected with her. Katsuyu had already engulfed her but it did little to reduce the damage. She felt herself being dismembered and torn apart as she descended to the ground. She hoped her seal was enough to keep alive. The last thing she saw was a literal meteor of pure chakra hovering in the air before darkness completely engulfed her. Naruto arrived to find the village in chaos. The toads had reverse summoned him back to Konoha saying he was needed at the village immediately. He had just gotten the hang of Sage Mode. He had wanted to object, saying he needed to practice more but he was glad that they had forced him to return. He could never forgive himself for failing to protect the village in the name of training. Civilians were still being evacuated as the battle raged on. Naruto noticed that their shinobi fought to avoid as much damage as possible. There were few civilians scattered about as they hurriedly made their way to the evacuation tunnels. There were also some dead bodies littering the ground. He ran through the streets, trying to find any familiar face who could tell him what the heck was going on. A double-headed lion literally jumped out from a portal that appeared in front. He shoved a Rasengan in its face before continuing his search. Naruto Uzumaki. A green-haired Anbu was perched on the side of the building in front of him. You are to come with immediately. You have strict orders to. The woman's words died on her tongue as they both took in the sight of the giant ball of chakra which increasing size by the second. What the heck is that? He asked in shock. The ball stopped expanding. A moment of tense silence passed. It was broken as the ball started descending to the village. Naruto could hear the screams emanating from every side yet he could only stare. His Rasengan wouldn't be able to stop this, no matter how big it was. He felt utterly helpless. He was going to die. They were all going to die. This was the end. The massive chakra orb was quickly approaching them. It reached the Hokage monument and went no further. Several strange colored patterns dotted the skyline. An intricate web of chakra protected Konoha from the assault. It trembled from the force but held firm. Everyone cheered as the web started moving, enveloping the chakra orb in a prism. He could feel his spirits returning. Several seconds lasted before it was covered completely. The chakra orb suddenly exploded in a white light, making a deafening roaring sound that hurt their ears and made everyone cover them instinctively. The bright light forced them to cover their eyes. When Naruto reopened them, the sky was clear as if there hadn't been a threat looming over them mere seconds ago. The Anbu let out a sigh of relief. The blonde has almost forgotten about her. Naruto Uzumaki, you have orders to neutralize the threat known as pain immediately. That was just his clone. His real body is located just outside the village. Follow me, she spoke in a robotic tone. Naruto didn't need to be told twice and followed the woman. Madara was seated peacefully as he enjoyed a cup of tea. He was in a megakure, specifically where the Gedo statue was located. He needed to finish off the Konoha nin who had made an unceremonious appearance at his village, especially Jiraiya. By this time, he had been already killed off in the last timeline. Yet he was still alive. He had arrived late at AIM. Had he been earlier, he would have encountered pain, but time was not on his side. He could not risk the entire mission because of him, no matter how important it was that he die. His mind went to more pressing things. It was vital that he get the Rinnegan as soon as possible. His plan had been to kill Conan and go to Konoha to collect his eyes. Nagato had been adamant that he go alone. He didn't want to risk his most prized friend. Too bad he didn't know that he had left her in the lion's den. It was honestly a pity. The Uzumaki had lost his other friend because of the injustices of the shinobi world. But it would all be fixed soon. He just needed to collect all the tailed beasts and all would be well. He took out a kunai. He put his teacup on the floor and made his way to the dozen of cables that were connected to the Gedo statue. Nagato had done a perfect job to feed it with his chakra. He was no longer useful. Except for his eyes, yes, he still needed his eyes. He slashed at the cables.